High Arbiter Zolvan stood on the bridge of his warship and looked down at the blue planet below. Earth, a small world on the edge of the galaxy, a world that the Velith Dominion had ignored for thousands of years because it was so primitive and worthless. But today, Earth would serve a purpose. "Begin the drop," Zolvan commanded. His voice was cold and without feeling. He had done this many times before. Punishment was his specialty. Behind his ship, 12 massive transport vessels moved into position over the planet. Inside those ships were 2.3 million Kethari refugees. Men, women, children, and elders. All of them were about to be abandoned on a world that knew nothing about life beyond its own sky. The Kethari had once been a proud species. They lived on a beautiful desert world and built cities of white stone that glowed under 3 suns. They were peaceful. They believed in harmony and balance. They refused to fight in the Dominion's endless wars of conquest. That was their crime. The Velith Dominion did not accept refusal. For 200 years, they pressured the Kethari to provide soldiers. When the Kethari said no, the Dominion took their planet. They burned the white cities. They poisoned the wells. They loaded every surviving Kethari onto transport ships and told them they would be relocated. Zolvan smiled as he remembered the looks on their faces. Hope. They had actually believed the Dominion would show mercy. Now they would learn the truth. "Sir," one of his officers said, "the humans have detected our ships. Their primitive radio signals are going crazy. They seem confused." "Of course they are confused," Zolvan replied. "They have never seen a starship before. By the time they understand what is happening, it will be too late." The transport ships descended through the clouds. Their doors opened over 12 of Earth's largest cities. New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, Lagos, Sao Paulo, Sydney, Cairo, Moscow, Beijing, Berlin, Mexico City. The Kethari were pushed out onto the streets below. Zolvan watched through his viewing screen as chaos erupted on the surface. Humans ran in every direction. Some screamed, some pointed at the sky, some fell to their knees as if praying to their primitive gods. And in the middle of it all, the Kethari stood in fear and confusion. They were tall beings, almost 7 feet, with pale blue skin and 4 slender arms. Their bodies had natural patterns that glowed softly in the dark. They had large eyes that showed every emotion they felt. Right now, those eyes showed terror. A Kethari mother held her 2 children close, all 6 of her arms wrapped around them as humans surrounded her on a street in New York. She did not understand their language. She did not know where she was. She only knew that she had been thrown away like garbage on a world of strangers. "Please," she whispered in her own language. "Please do not hurt us." The humans stared at her. Some held weapons, some held phones and recorded everything. Police sirens filled the air. Helicopters flew overhead. One small human child broke free from his mother's hand and walked toward the alien woman. He was maybe 5 years old. He had no fear in his eyes, only curiosity. "Mommy," he said, looking back at his mother. "She's scared." "Why is she scared?" The Kethari mother looked at the small human. For a moment, their eyes met. 2 mothers, 2 different species. But in that moment, they understood each other perfectly. The human mother stepped forward slowly. She put her hand on her chest and said, "I am Sarah." The Kethari did not understand the words, but she understood the gesture. She put one of her hands on her own chest and said, "Kelvith." It was the first real contact between human and Kethari. It happened not in a government building or a military base. It happened on a street corner, between 2 mothers who were both afraid but chose to reach out anyway. High above, Zolvan watched this scene with disgust. "Primitive sentimentality," he muttered. "It will not last." The humans are classified as a Category 7 aggressive species. They have fought thousands of wars among themselves. They kill each other over land, resources, and ideas. When they realize these refugees will compete for their food and space, they will turn violent. His officers nodded in agreement. Everyone knew how this would end. The Dominion had done this before. They had dumped unwanted populations on hostile worlds many times. The result was always the same: death, suffering, and eventually, the survivors would beg to serve the Dominion in exchange for rescue. "Set a reminder," Zolvan ordered. "We will return in 3 solar cycles to collect what remains of the Kethari. By then, the humans will have done our work for us." "Yes," High Arbiter. The Dominion fleet turned away from Earth and jumped into faster-than-light travel. In seconds, they were gone. They left behind 2.3 million frightened refugees and a planet of 7 billion humans who had just learned they were not alone in the universe. On the ground, the situation was getting more intense by the minute. In Tokyo, police formed lines around groups of Cathari who huddled together in a public park. The aliens made no aggressive moves. They simply sat on the grass and held their children. In Lagos, a crowd gathered around a group of Cathari elders. The elders were weak from the long journey. Some could barely stand. Local women brought them water and fruit, not knowing if the aliens could even eat human food. In Mumbai, doctors rushed to help a Cathari woman who was giving birth. She had gone into labor during the drop from the transport ship. The doctors had never seen alien biology before, but they refused to let her suffer alone. They did their best with what they knew. In Sao Paulo, a Cathari man tried to protect a group of children from a mob of angry humans. He spread all 4 of his arms wide and stood between the children and the crowd. He was prepared to die for them, but then something unexpected happened. A Brazilian man stepped out of the mob. He was big and strong, with tattoos covering his arms. He looked like someone who had lived a hard life. The Cathari man tensed, expecting violence. Instead, the Brazilian man turned around and faced the mob. "What is wrong with you?" he shouted at his fellow humans. "Look at them. They are children. They are scared. Is this who we are? Is this what we do?" The mob went quiet. "I have been hungry," the man continued. "I have been homeless. I have been desperate. And some of you helped me when no one else would. Now, it is our turn to help someone else." He turned back to the Cathari man and held out his hand. The alien did not understand the gesture at first, but slowly, carefully, he reached out with one of his 4 hands and took the human's hand in his own. The Brazilian man smiled. "Welcome to Earth, my friend. I do not know why you are here. I do not know what happened to you. But you are safe now." The Cathari man did not understand the words, but he understood the smile. He understood the kindness in the stranger's eyes. For the first time since the Dominion took his world, he felt hope. All across the planet, similar scenes played out. Yes, there was fear. Yes, there was confusion. Yes, there was some violence and hatred. Humans were not perfect. They had never been perfect. But something else was happening too. Something the Velith Dominion had not expected. Something that would change the galaxy forever. Humanity was making a choice, and that choice would prove that the Dominion had made a terrible mistake. The first 48 hours after the arrival were the most chaotic in human history. Every government on Earth went into emergency mode. Military forces mobilized. Borders were closed. Emergency broadcasts interrupted every television and radio channel. The internet nearly crashed from the traffic as billions of people tried to understand what had happened. Aliens were real. They were here. And millions of them had been dropped on Earth without warning or explanation. In Washington, the president held an emergency meeting with military advisors. Some wanted to detain all the aliens immediately. Others wanted to study them. A few suggested more extreme measures that the president refused to even consider. In Moscow, similar arguments took place. In Beijing, in London, in every capital city, leaders debated what to do. The world had prepared for many disasters, earthquakes, pandemics, even nuclear war. But no one had ever prepared for this. Meanwhile, the Cathari waited. They had nowhere to go. They did not speak any human language. They did not know Earth's customs or laws. All they could do was stay where they had been dropped and hope that these strange beings would not hurt them. On the second day, the United Nations called an emergency session in Geneva. Every member nation sent representatives. The meeting hall was packed. Cameras broadcast the session to the entire world. The debate was fierce. "These beings were dumped on us without our consent," the American ambassador argued. "We have no obligation to care for them. We should demand that whoever left them here come back and take responsibility." "And how do you propose we make that demand?" the Chinese ambassador replied. "We do not even know who left them here. We have no way to contact them. We have no way to force them to do anything. Then we must protect ourselves first," the Russian ambassador said. "We know nothing about these creatures. They could carry diseases. They could be dangerous. We should quarantine them until we understand what we are dealing with." The debate went back and forth for hours. Fear and suspicion filled the room. Many ambassadors spoke about protecting their own people first. Few talked about the Kethari as anything other than a problem to be solved. Then Dr. Amara Okonkwo stood up. She was a diplomat from Nigeria. She had spent her life working on refugee issues. She had seen the worst of what humans could do to each other. But she had also seen the best. "May I speak?" she asked. The room went quiet. Dr. Okonkwo walked to the center podium and looked out at the assembled leaders of the world. "I have listened to this debate for many hours," she began. "And I have heard a lot of fear. I understand that fear. Something impossible has happened. Everything we thought we knew about the universe has changed overnight. It is natural to be afraid." She paused and took a deep breath. "But I must ask you all a question. What do we actually know about these beings? Let me tell you what I have seen in the past 2 days." She pressed a button, and images appeared on the large screen behind her. "I have seen families. I have seen parents holding their children. I have seen elders who are too weak to stand. I have seen young people who are terrified and confused. I have seen beings who cry when they are sad and smile when someone shows them kindness." The images showed Kethari refugees all over the world. A mother feeding her baby. An elderly man being helped by human volunteers. Children playing with human children who did not care that their new friends had blue skin and 4 arms. "These are not monsters, Dr. Okonkwo continued. "These are people. Different from us, yes, but people nonetheless. And they are clearly victims. Someone took everything from them and left them here to suffer. That someone expected us to finish the job." She let those words sink in before continuing. "I come from a continent that knows what it means to be exploited by more powerful forces. Africa has suffered for centuries because others saw us as less than human. Many of our people were taken from their homes and scattered across the world. Many were left to die when they were no longer useful." Her voice grew stronger. "We have all been the Kethari at some point in our history. Every nation in this room has known suffering. Every nation has known what it feels like to be unwanted, to be abandoned, to be treated as less than nothing. And every nation has also known the kindness of strangers who chose to help when they did not have to." She looked directly at the cameras broadcasting her words to the world. "Whoever left these beings on our planet did so as a punishment. They expected us to be cruel. They expected us to prove that we are nothing more than violent primitives who cannot see past our own fear. They are watching right now, waiting for us to fail." She slammed her hand on the podium. "I say we prove them wrong." The room erupted. Some ambassadors shouted their support. Others shouted their opposition. It took several minutes for order to be restored. When the vote was finally called, it was close. Very close. But in the end, humanity made its choice. The Helsinki Accords for extraterrestrial refugees were drafted in 72 hours. It was the fastest international agreement in human history. Every nation agreed to accept a portion of the Kethari population based on their size and resources. Special programs were created to help with integration. Medical teams were organized to study Kethari biology so they could provide proper health care. Most importantly, the Kethari were declared protected persons under international law. Any nation that harmed them would face consequences from the entire world. It was not perfect. There was still fear and prejudice. Some people refused to accept the decision. There were protests and even some violence. But the majority of humanity had spoken. The Kethari would not be turned away. In the days that followed, something remarkable happened. Ordinary people all over the world stepped up to help in ways that no government had planned. In Spain, a farmer offered his spare barn as temporary housing for a Kethari family until proper arrangements could be made. In Canada, a retired teacher started a language exchange program where humans and Kethari learned to communicate through pictures and gestures. In Japan, engineers worked around the clock to modify buildings so the tall Kethari could live comfortably. In Brazil, Carlos Mendes, a 63-year-old retired schoolteacher, opened his small apartment in São Paulo to a Kethari family of 5. He did not speak their language. They did not speak his. But he showed them how to use the shower. He cooked them food, testing carefully to see what they could eat. He gave the children paper and crayons and watched them draw pictures of a world with 3 suns. When reporters asked him why he did it, Carlos shrugged. "My grandmother came to Brazil as a refugee from Portugal," he said. "She always told me that kindness costs nothing but means everything. These people needed help. I could help. It was that simple." Stories like this spread across the world. They reminded people that humanity was capable of great good, even in times of great fear. Within 6 months, Every Kethari refugee had been placed with a host family, or in proper housing. Language programs had developed basic translation tools. Medical researchers had learned enough about Kethari biology to provide basic health care. It was just the beginning. There were still many challenges ahead. But humanity had passed its first test. They had chosen compassion over cruelty. And somewhere in the depths of space, the Velith Dominion received reports of what was happening on Earth. High Arbiter Zolvan read the reports with growing disbelief. This was not supposed to happen. The humans were supposed to destroy each other, fighting over resources. They were supposed to turn on the refugees in fear and hatred. They were supposed to prove that primitive species could never be trusted. Instead, they were building something new. Zolvan crumpled the report in his clawed hand. This changed nothing, he told himself. The humans were still primitive. They had no technology, no military power, no understanding of the wider galaxy. In 3 years, he would return as planned. By then, surely, the humans would have shown their true nature. He was certain of it. He was wrong. 2 years had passed since the day the sky opened and changed everything. The world was different now. Not just because aliens lived among humans. It was different because humans themselves had changed. They had discovered something about themselves that they had almost forgotten. They had discovered that they could be good. The Kethari were no longer strangers. They were neighbors, co-workers, and friends. In some cases, they were family. Maria Santos was 7 years old when the Kethari arrived. She had been terrified at first. The tall blue beings with their glowing skin and 4 arms looked like monsters from her nightmares. She hid behind her mother whenever she saw them on the street. Then a Kethari family moved into the apartment next door. The youngest child, a girl named Velisha, was about Maria's age. For weeks, they only stared at each other through the windows. Neither knew how to say hello. One day, Maria was playing with a ball in the hallway. It bounced wrong and rolled to Velisha's door. The Kethari girl opened the door and picked up the ball with 2 of her 4 hands. She looked at it with curiosity. She had never seen such a thing before. Maria walked over slowly. She pointed at herself. "Maria," she said. The Kethari girl pointed at herself. "Velisha." Maria pointed at the ball. "Ball. Ball." Velisha repeated, her voice making the word sound musical. That was the beginning. Within a month, they were best friends. Maria taught Velisha Portuguese. Velisha taught Maria to understand the glowing patterns that Kethari used to express emotions. They played together every day. They told each other secrets. When Maria had nightmares, Velisha would glow softly in the dark to comfort her. Scenes like this happened all over the world. In Germany, a Kethari engineer worked with human scientists to improve solar panel technology. The Kethari had spent thousands of years living under 3 suns. They understood light and energy in ways humans had never imagined. Within a year, solar panels became twice as efficient and half as expensive. In Kenya, Kethari farmers shared their knowledge of desert agriculture. Their homeworld had been harsh and dry. They had learned to grow food with very little water. These techniques helped transform barren land into productive farms. People who had struggled with famine now had food to spare. In the United States, a Kethari doctor named Saveth discovered that a common Kethari medicine could treat certain human cancers. The medicine was made from a plant that grew easily on Earth. Within months, treatment began. Thousands of lives were saved. But the Kethari gave humanity more than just technology and knowledge. They gave them perspective. Elder Siraveth was one of the oldest Kethari on Earth. He was over 200 years old by human counting. He had seen his world rise and fall. He had seen the Dominion destroy everything his people had built. He had lost his wife, his children, and his grandchildren to the violence. Yet he did not hate. He could not hate. It was not in his nature. When Oxford University invited him to teach philosophy, he accepted. His lectures were translated into every human language and watched by millions. "You ask me about the meaning of life," he said during one famous lecture. "I will tell you what I have learned in 200 years of living." The audience leaned forward to hear his wisdom. "The universe is vast," Siraveth continued. "It contains billions of stars and countless worlds. Many of those worlds have intelligent life. I have seen some of them. I have met beings of great power and ancient wisdom, and I will tell you a secret about them." He paused for effect. "Most of them are cruel. Most of them care only about power and conquest. The Velith Dominion is not unusual. They are typical. The galaxy is ruled by those who take what they want and destroy anyone who resists. The audience looked disturbed. This was not the comforting wisdom they had expected. But then I came to your world, Suravith said, and his body began to glow softly with emotion. And you showed me something I had never seen before. You showed me compassion without obligation. You helped us, even though you gained nothing from it. You opened your homes to strangers even though you were afraid. His glow became brighter. In all my travels across the stars, I have never witnessed anything like what humanity did for my people. You do not understand how rare you are. You do not understand how precious your kindness is. The galaxy is dark and cold, but you are a light. Never forget that. Never let anyone take that light away from you. His words spread across the planet. They were quoted by leaders and ordinary people alike. They helped humans see themselves in a new way. For the first time, humanity began to think of itself as one people. The old divisions seemed less important now. They were all humans, facing a universe that was bigger and more dangerous than they had ever imagined, and they had proven that they could face that universe together. The United Earth Initiative was born from this new feeling of unity. It was a joint program between all nations and the Cathari to develop new technology and explore space. Human engineers worked alongside Cathari scientists. They shared knowledge freely. They learned from each other. The first human faster-than-light engine was built 3 years after the Cathari arrived. It was crude by galactic standards. It was slow and unreliable, but it worked. For the first time, humans could travel to other stars. The ship was named the Hope. But not everyone was happy with these changes. In the shadows, old fears still lived. Some humans still hated the Cathari. They blamed the aliens for all the world's problems. They formed groups and spread lies. They attacked Cathari homes and businesses, and some Cathari struggled to adapt. They missed their home world. They grieved for family members who had died. Some fell into despair, but the bonds between the two species were stronger than the forces trying to tear them apart. In Tokyo, a human man married a Cathari woman. It was the first official marriage between the species. Thousands attended the ceremony. Millions watched online. The couple stood together under cherry blossoms and spoke vows of love and partnership. When asked about their relationship, the man smiled. "She is not an alien to me," he said. "She is the woman I love. That is all that matters." In Brazil, Carlos Mendes, the retired teacher who had taken in a Cathari family on the first day, was now considered a grandfather by those same refugees. The children called him Avô Carlos. They had grown up in his small apartment, learning Portuguese and eating his cooking. Now they were young adults, ready to make their own way in the world. "I never had children of my own," Carlos said in an interview. "I always thought I would grow old alone. Now I have a family bigger than I ever dreamed. The universe sent them to me, and I am grateful every day." He wiped tears from his eyes. "They call this planet Earth, but to the Cathari, it has another name. They call it Velthoria. In their language, it means the place of unexpected kindness. I think that is the most beautiful thing I have ever heard." The Cathari were no longer refugees. They were citizens. They were friends. They were family. And they were about to be tested, because far across the galaxy, High Arbiter Zolvan was preparing his return. He had heard the reports. He knew what had happened on Earth, and he was furious. The humans had not broken the Cathari. They had welcomed them. They had made them stronger. They had defied the will of the Dominion. This could not be allowed to stand. Zolvan assembled his fleet, 40 warships, each capable of destroying a continent. He would show the humans what happened to those who defied the Velith Dominion. He would burn their cities and take back the Cathari by force, and he would make sure the entire galaxy watched. This time, there would be no mercy. The Dominion fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. 40 warships. Each one was larger than a human aircraft carrier. Each one carried weapons that could turn mountains into dust. High Arbiter Zolvan stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Divine Wrath, and looked at the blue planet in the distance. 3 years ago, he had left a handful of worthless refugees here to die. Now he had returned to correct a mistake. "Scan the system," he ordered. "I want to know what these primitives have been doing." His officers worked their consoles. Seconds later, the results appeared on the main screen. Zolvan's eyes went wide. "That is impossible," he whispered. The space around Earth was not empty. Construction platforms floated in orbit. Ships moved between them. They were small and crude compared to Dominion vessels. But they were there. Dozens of them. Perhaps hundreds. Sir, his tactical officer said nervously. We are detecting weapons platforms in orbit around the planet. They appear to be based on Dominion technology. They must have studied the transport ships we left behind. That was 3 years ago. Zolvan snapped. These are primitives. They were still using chemical rockets. How could they possibly have developed this much in such a short time? We are being hailed. High Arbiter. Zolvan straightened his uniform. On screen, the image that appeared was not what he expected. A human woman in military dress stood beside an elderly Kethari. Behind them, a room full of humans and Kethari worked together at various stations. This is Admiral Chenwei of United Earth Defense Command, the woman said. Her voice was calm and steady. You are entering protected space. State your intentions or you will be escorted out. Zolvan almost laughed. Escorted out? By what? These primitive ships could not possibly threaten his fleet. But he kept his composure. He was a representative of the Velith Dominion. He would not show amusement to inferior beings. I am High Arbiter Zolvan of the Velith Dominion, he replied. 3 years ago, I deposited Dominion property on your world. I have returned to collect it. You will hand over all Kethari immediately, and you will surrender your leaders for judgment. Your planet has committed crimes against the Dominion by sheltering our property. Admiral Chen did not flinch. The Kethari are not property. They are citizens of Earth. They are protected by our laws. We will not hand them over to anyone. You do not have a choice. Primitive, Zolvan said coldly. Look at my fleet. 40 warships. Your little toys cannot stop us. Surrender now, and we may show mercy. Resist, and we will reduce your cities to ash. We have looked at your fleet, Admiral Chen replied. We have been tracking you since you entered our solar system. And I have a message for you from the people of Earth, both human and Kethari. She leaned forward, and her eyes were like steel. The Kethari are our people now. They are our neighbors. They are our friends. They are our family. If you want them, you will have to go through us. And I promise you, High Arbiter, that will not be as easy as you think. Zolvan felt anger rising in his chest. How dare this creature speak to him this way? She was nothing. Her species was nothing. They had barely discovered electricity a few generations ago. You are making a terrible mistake, he growled. The Dominion has conquered 1,000 worlds. We have destroyed species far more advanced than yours. You cannot win this fight. Maybe not, Admiral Chen said. But we will fight anyway. Because that is what you do when someone threatens your family. The transmission ended. Zolvan stood in silence for a long moment. His officers waited nervously. They had never seen anyone speak to the High Arbiter that way. Begin the attack, Zolvan finally ordered. Destroy their orbital defenses. Prepare landing forces. We will take the Kethari by force. The Dominion fleet moved forward. On Earth, alarms sounded in every city. People rushed to shelters that had been built over the past 2 years. Schools emptied as teachers led children to safety. Hospitals prepared for casualties. Emergency broadcasts told everyone to remain calm and stay underground. But not everyone went to the shelters. In Sao Paulo, Carlos Mendez stood on his balcony and looked up at the sky. His Kethari grandchildren stood beside him. They could see flashes of light in orbit where the battle had begun. Come inside, Avo, Velisha said. She was no longer a child. She was a young woman now, tall and strong. It is not safe out here. I am too old to hide, Carlos replied. I will watch. If this is the end, I want to see it. Velisha put her hand on his shoulder. It will not be the end. You taught us that hope is the most powerful force in the universe. I believe that. I believe in humanity. Carlos smiled at her. Then I will believe too. In orbit, the first missiles struck Earth's defense platforms. Explosions lit up the darkness of space. Human ships moved to intercept the Dominion fleet. They were slower and weaker than the enemy, but they did not retreat. The UES Hope, humanity's first faster-than-light ship, led the defense. Its captain was a woman named Sarah Chen, Admiral Chen's daughter. She had been one of the first humans to befriend the Kethari. Now, she fought to protect them. All ships, hold formation, she ordered. Do not let them get a clear shot at the planet. Captain, their weapons are too strong, her tactical officer reported. We cannot win a direct fight. Then we do not fight directly. We slow them down. We buy time for the ground defenses to charge. We make them pay for every inch of space they take. The battle raged for hours. Human ships were destroyed. Hundreds of brave men and women died in the cold of space. But for every ship that fell, another took its place. Earth had been building for 3 years. They had prepared for this moment, and they were not alone. A new signal appeared on Zolvan's screen. More ships were arriving, but they were not human ships. "What is that?" he demanded. His officers went pale. "Sir, we are detecting vessels from the Veth Collective and Morthani merchant ships. And there are more signals coming. Sir, there are over 100 ships arriving." Zolvan could not believe what he was seeing. The Veth Collective were slaves of the Dominion. The Morthani were cowards who avoided all conflict. Why would they be here? A new transmission appeared on his screen. A Veth commander spoke in a mechanical voice. "This is the Veth Collective. We have been observing Earth for 2 years. We have seen what humanity has done. We have seen them choose compassion over cruelty. We have never witnessed such a thing in all our centuries of servitude." The mechanical voice grew stronger. "The Dominion told us that kindness was weakness. They told us that only the strong survive. But humanity has shown us another way. They have proven that the strong can also be good. We will not allow you to destroy that." Another transmission came from the Morthani. "The Dominion has bullied us for too long. Humanity has given us hope. Today, we stand with Earth." More and more signals came. Species that had been oppressed by the Dominion for generations. Species that had believed they were alone in their suffering. They had all been watching Earth. They had all seen what humanity had done. And they had all decided to fight. Zolvan felt something he had never felt before. Fear. "This is impossible," he said. "You are all slaves. You are property of the Dominion. You cannot do this." "We can," the Veth commander replied. "We are doing it, and it is because of them." The Allied fleet moved into formation alongside the human ships. Earth was no longer alone. The battle turned. The Dominion fleet, designed to crush primitive planets without resistance, was not prepared for a coordinated assault from multiple species. Ship after ship fell to the combined fire. Within hours, the Dominion fleet was in retreat. Half of their ships were destroyed or disabled. The rest fled toward the edge of the solar system. "Follow them," Captain Sarah Chen ordered. "Do not let them escape." "Wait," a voice said. It was Elder Siravith, who had been allowed on the bridge as a representative of the Kethari. "Let them go." Sarah turned to him in surprise. "After everything they did to your people, you want to let them escape?" Siravith nodded slowly. "If we destroy them completely, we become like them. That is not who we are. Let them go. Let them tell the Dominion what happened here. Let the galaxy know that Earth stood against tyranny and won." Sarah looked at the old Kethari for a long moment. Then she nodded. "All ships, stand down. Let them go." The Dominion survivors fled into faster-than-light travel. They were gone. On Earth, people emerged from their shelters. They looked up at the sky and saw the fading lights of battle. They did not fully understand what had happened, but they understood one thing. They had won. Carlos Mendez hugged his Kethari grandchildren as they watched the news together. Tears streamed down his old face. "We did it," he whispered. "We actually did it." Velicia held him close. "No, Avo, you did it. Humanity did it. You showed the galaxy what kindness really means. For the first time in history, Earth was not alone. They had allies. They had proven themselves. And they had sent a message to the entire galaxy. The age of cruelty was ending. Something new was beginning. The news of the Battle of Sol spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. A primitive species on a backwater world had defeated a Dominion fleet. Not alone, but with allies they had gathered through nothing more than kindness. It was impossible. It was unbelievable. And yet, it was true. On 100 worlds, oppressed species whispered the name Earth like a prayer. They shared stories of what had happened there. They talked about humans who took in refugees and treated them like family. They talked about a planet where strength and compassion existed together. For the first time in centuries, they began to hope. The Velith Dominion was in chaos. High Arbiter Zolvan had returned in disgrace. His flagship, the Divine Wrath, was crippled. More than half his fleet was destroyed. The survivors were traumatized and broken. The Dominion Council summoned him to explain his failure. "You were given 40 warships. the Supreme Arbiter said coldly. You were sent to discipline a primitive world, and you returned with ruins and shame. How do you explain this? Zolvan stood before the council, his head bowed. He had no explanation. Everything he believed had been proven wrong. The primitives were not weak. Kindness was not a flaw. The species he had dismissed as insignificant had humiliated the greatest empire in the galaxy. The humans, he said slowly, are not what we thought. They are different. They have something we do not understand. What could primitives possibly have that we do not? The Supreme Arbiter demanded. Zolvan looked up. For the first time in his life, he spoke the truth. They care about each other. Not just their own species. They care about everyone. They took in beings they had never met, beings who looked nothing like them, and treated them as their own children. I have never seen anything like it. I did not believe it was possible. The council was silent. They have shown the galaxy that there is another way. Zolvan continued. Other species are listening. They are starting to believe that they do not have to submit to us. This is not just a military defeat. This is the beginning of the end of everything we have built. The Supreme Arbiter dismissed Zolvan from the chamber, but his words echoed in the minds of every council member. They knew he was right. Something fundamental had changed. The Dominion had ruled through fear for 10,000 years. But fear only worked when people believed they had no choice. Now they had seen that there was a choice. Now they had seen what was possible. Within months, rebellions broke out across Dominion space. The Veth Collective officially declared independence. The Morthani closed their borders to Dominion ships. A dozen other species followed. The galaxy was waking up. On Earth, the celebrations continued for weeks. Humans and Kethari danced together in the streets. Fireworks lit up the sky every night. People who had never believed in anything found themselves believing in humanity. But the leaders knew that victory in one battle did not mean the war was over. The Dominion still controlled most of the galaxy. They still had vast fleets and ancient weapons. They would return eventually. Earth needed to prepare. The Terran Compact was founded 6 months after the Battle of Sol. It was an alliance between Earth and every species that had come to their defense. The Veth Collective, the Morthani, the Kelveth, a species of peaceful explorers who had hidden from the Dominion for centuries, and the Kethari, who were no longer refugees but founding members of a new galactic order. The founding ceremony was held in Geneva, in the same hall where the United Nations had voted to accept the refugees 3 years earlier. Representatives from every member species gathered to sign the charter. Dr. Amara Okonkwo, now Ambassador Okonkwo, represented humanity. She had gone from being a diplomat who gave one speech to being the voice of Earth to the stars. She stood at the podium and looked out at the gathered beings. Humans sat beside Veth with their mechanical bodies. Kethari stood next to Morthani with their insect-like features. Kelveth floated in tanks of water because they could not breathe air. They were all different. They came from different worlds with different cultures and different histories, but they were united by a single idea. We are gathered here today to begin something new, Ambassador Okonkwo said. For too long, the galaxy has been ruled by those who believe that power comes from fear. They built their empires on the suffering of others. They told themselves that cruelty was necessary, that kindness was weakness, that only the strong deserved to survive. She paused and looked around the room. We reject that belief. Every species in this room has chosen a different path. We have chosen to stand together. We have chosen to protect the weak and welcome the stranger. We have chosen to believe that compassion is not weakness, but strength. The representatives from every species nodded in agreement. The Terran Compact is built on a simple principle. We will judge civilizations not by their military power, not by their technology, not by their wealth. We will judge them by how they treat the most vulnerable among them. Any species that wishes to join us must accept this principle. She lifted the charter for everyone to see. We do not seek to conquer the galaxy. We do not wish to replace one empire with another. We only wish to offer an alternative, a shelter for those who are oppressed, a home for those who have none, a family for those who are alone. She signed the charter. One by one, representatives from every member species came forward to add their own marks. When it was finished, Ambassador Okonkwo turned to face the cameras that were broadcasting the ceremony across the galaxy. To the Velith Dominion and any other power that rules through fear, we say this: your way is not the only way. There is another path, and every species you have hurt, every world you have conquered, Every people you have broken now knows that path exists. The more you try to crush hope, the faster it will spread. She straightened her shoulders and spoke directly to every being watching. To those who are suffering under tyranny, we say this: you are not alone. You are not forgotten. There is a place in the galaxy where kindness matters, where your life has value, where strangers will welcome you as family. That place exists, and it is growing every day. The ceremony ended, but the message continued to spread. In the following years, the Terran Compact grew. Species that had been isolated for centuries reached out to join. Refugees from Dominion space made the dangerous journey to Earth and its allied worlds. Each one brought stories of hope spreading where there had only been despair. The Dominion tried to fight back. They launched attacks against compact worlds. They tried to assassinate leaders. They spread lies and propaganda. But nothing they did could stop the idea that had been born on Earth. You could not kill hope. The more you tried to crush it, the stronger it became. 20 years after the Kithari first arrived on Earth, Ambassador Okonkwo stood on the balcony of the new compact headquarters on Earth's moon. She was old now, her hair white and her movements slow, but her mind was as sharp as ever. Beside her stood Velisha, the little Kethari girl who had once learned to say ball in a Sao Paulo hallway. She was an ambassador herself now, representing her people in the Compact Council. "Do you remember the day we arrived?" Velisha asked. "I was so frightened. I thought the humans would hurt us." Okonkwo smiled. "I remember. I was frightened too. Frightened that we would fail you. Frightened that humanity would choose fear instead of kindness. But you did not fail us." Velisha's skin glowed softly with emotion. "You saved us. You gave us a home. And in doing so, you changed the galaxy." They looked out at the stars together. Somewhere out there, the Dominion was still fighting to hold on to power, but their empire was shrinking every year. More and more worlds were breaking free. More and more species were joining the Compact. "We did not change the galaxy," Okonkwo said quietly. "We just reminded it of something it had forgotten. That kindness is possible. That we can choose to be good. That the measure of a civilization is not how powerful it is, but how it treats the powerless." Velisha took the old woman's hand in two of her own. "My grandfather Carlos passed away last year," she said. "At his funeral, humans and Kethari wept together. He was loved by everyone who knew him. And do you know what his last words were?" Okonkwo shook her head. He said, "I was just a retired teacher in a small apartment. I had nothing to give but kindness. And look what kindness built." Okonkwo felt tears in her eyes. He was right. That is exactly what kindness built. They stood together in silence. Two beings from different worlds, united by bonds stronger than blood. Far below them, Earth turned slowly in space. The blue planet that had once been a backwater, ignored by the galaxy. The planet that had been chosen for a punishment and turned it into a blessing. The planet that had taught the stars what it meant to be human. In the darkness of space, a new light was growing. It was small compared to the ancient empires. It was young compared to the powers that had ruled for millennia. But it was warm, and it was kind, and it was spreading. The galaxy would never be the same, because once, on a small blue world on the edge of the stars, strangers had been welcomed as family, and that had changed everything.